Welcome to the Magical Mommy Monday podcast. We are so excited for today's guest because not only are we big fans, but our kids are big fans too. We have Laurie Berkner on this episode to discuss her life in music, being a mom, and our mutual love of Broadway. On March 5th, Laurie's 14th album, Let's Go, will be released with original songs, many of which were written during the pandemic. Be sure to follow Laurie on social media to stay up to date on her Facebook live streams, her upcoming virtual concerts, and more. Now, on with the episode as we dive right into our conversation.
So I thought that we would start by kind of telling you how we first heard about your music.
Yes. We're basically just going to fangirl to you first.
Yes. I'm sure you never get this. I started out, one of my first jobs, I was a preschool teacher and worked with kids for several years. And I think in 2012 I was at a preschool in Edina, Minnesota, and there was a yoga teacher actually that came in. And she played These Are My Glasses and did kind of a little yoga routine with it. And there's just something about the simplicity and the calmness of the song that I fell in love with. And this was before I had kids. I had nieces and nephews, but I automatically downloaded the song. And I just loved it. And it was just so short and sweet. And ever since then, I still have it downloaded on my phone. I play it for my kids all the time. But after that, I just kind of did like a Laurie Berkner deep dive. And then, we went into We Are the Dinosaurs. And then is it the goldfish, the Let's Go Swimming?
Mm-hmm.
And and I actually ended up doing kids yoga and kind of kids wellness classes. And I incorporated your songs into my routines to get the kids moving. And that's what I love about your music is that there's always a way to get the kids moving, to get their wiggles out. And so that's kind of my background with you. But Jen, what about you?
So my son, who is 6 now, he had a speech delay, so he didn't start talking until about 2.5, closer to 3. But when we started his speech therapy, one of the therapies was going to group. And in the group, the speech therapist would always play your songs for everything. So definitely Let's Go Swimming and Bumblebee. And they would take out instruments and they would dance around. But it is Let's Go Swimming, I think, is probably the first song where I saw him like really come out, try to sing along with it, do all the moves. Because then, of course, we found you on YouTube. So then he could do all the moves that you were doing. But it definitely helped him come out of his shell more verbally. And so we have, for years, I've been listening to you. And I loved when you started doing the Facebook Lives during the pandemic, especially in the beginning, because the same 6-year-old had music every Wednesday in school. So it was great when you started your Facebook Lives on Wednesday because it was like, oh, it's Music Wednesday. Let's just do this. And so you were basically his music teacher then. So it was great. But no, we are, as you can tell, we are big fans and so thankful for you to come on this podcast to talk to us today. So awesome.
Thanks for telling me. I'm really happy to be here.
Have you always kind of catered to kids with your music? I know that you've been a musician since kind of the early 90s, but did your career in music always have to do with kids?
No. Right. So the early 90s is when I graduated from college, and actually in college. And no, I thought I was going to be on Broadway originally. Like that's what I really wanted to do. And then when I was in college, I started playing, wouldn't exactly call them bands, but definitely like more sort of like folky groups, like guitar playing, recorder playing, singing 60s cover songs and stuff. And I played with friends around New Brunswick. I went to Rutgers in New Brunswick, and we'd play around different places in New Jersey. And so it kind of and that developed into bands and things. And when I first started, I was with kids. I had gotten this job a year out of college where I was the music teacher at a preschool and an infant and child daycare at Rockefeller University in Manhattan. And that was sort of like, I mean, I had also been a camp counselor, a music counselor at a camp up in Vermont, but that was sort of my only, prior to Rockefeller, the only time I worked with kids with music, even though I loved hanging around kids. So it was a very big learning experience and process for me to be doing the music with kids rather than, and I was also still like playing at rock clubs and stuff in Manhattan at that point at night with some bands and things once I had graduated. So it was sort of a kids musician by day, rock musician by night, and eventually like was playing all over Long Island actually, and a bunch of places in New York and New Jersey and Connecticut with this all-female cover band. And it just eventually that became really unsustainable to like get up early in the morning to teach kids music or do kids' birthday parties, which just came out of teaching a lot of them on the weekends. I'd be like up until 4, 5, 6 a.m. performing with this all-female cover band at night, and then get up a couple hours later and wash off the cigarette smoke and like go and do these birthday parties.
Well, and the strain on your voice too. I mean, how do you keep it healthy when you're not getting enough rest?
Yeah, that was hard. It's so interesting because when I recorded my first kids album in 1997 because I had kind of developed a lot of songs with the kids I was teaching. And when I started that, I remember noticing that I had no head voice. Like I was singing all in my chest. And a lot of that was like from belting out things at night in these bars and realizing I started seeing a voice teacher at that point just to like try to figure out what was going on and why I couldn't sing up high. Yeah. And luckily she helped me find that again. But that was scary at the time. Yeah.
It's so funny because I wish I had more of a chest voice. I wish I could belt a little better. And
I can hear you have a higher voice. Yeah,
I do. I got my tonsils out and it actually got a little higher because my tonsils were so big. But I wish I could belt more. My chest voice just feels a little weak. I was actually an alto in high school.
I'm sure you could work with somebody on that. For me, I vocalize all the time still, like. I should do it every single day. I don't do it every single day, but I can't do a show without vocalizing first. Otherwise, I just, the strain, it's so easy to really hurt yourself, so.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And it is awesome that you saw the problem and then you went about correcting it because, you could have just strained and then done more damage on your voice, but you did it the right way.
Yeah, it's true. It's so easy to do that.
Yeah, right. So you were doing both day and night, and eventually you kind of thought, well, I have to pick one. And then by then you kind of had built like a Rolodex of children's songs. And then from there recorded your first album in 97.
Do we have that timeline right?
Sort of. I was still doing both for a long time.
Wow.
And I think it was my third kids album that I finally started to give up some of the other things, unless I am remembering wrong. Maybe you read my bio and I'm wrong, but I think it was that. I think it took a little longer, because I did not particularly think that the kids' music was like my ticket to a career. But it turned out to be.
Yeah.
But I thought that I was gonna, continue doing the rock stuff, the adult stuff, and was writing my own music at that point. But then, eventually, I remember doing a show one night on Long Island and I was kind of under the weather and I just didn't feel well. And I just remember like drunk people yelling "Freebird" and like play more solos. I was playing electric in that band and just like feeling so awful. And then getting up the next morning and going to this a birthday party in Battery Park City a couple hours later, and people there saying like, play Victor Vito, like specifically that song. So I know I had written that one then, which was on my third album. Anyway, so it's a little fuzzy what the actual chronology was, but thinking like, oh, they're not they're yelling at me to play songs I wrote. Like that's feels so good, Yeah. And the second I get there and start strumming, the kids are up and just like so happy to have the music and dancing and moving. Whereas like I had to wait till everybody got drunk to even like notice that we were playing, at these other gigs. And it felt so much more human and connected and personally satisfying. And I also knew that I could play music I had written, which was really exciting for the creative side and composer side of myself. So I kind of remember that day and thinking, I'm quitting the band. I'm not doing that anymore. I can just keep doing this kid stuff, and it feels like it's right. Like, this is where I should be.
Well, and it seems to have worked out a little bit for you, so that's good.
Yeah. This is a two-part question. These questions are just like filling up my brain really fast. Who were your influences when you were in that rock band? And who were your influences when, well, I guess you're still doing it, so when you were creating kids music?
You know, there's so many, like, over the course of my life, right?
Right.
But when I was doing my own, I had a band called Red Onion that was my own music. And then Lois Lane, because She Don't Need No Superman, was the cover band. And so that in the cover band, I didn't choose as much, although I did really enjoy, like, we really did play. It was the 90s, and we played songs from the 60s through the 90s. Yeah. And the one thing we almost never did were in our all-female cover band was play songs by all-female bands. Like, we didn't do the Bangles or the Go-Go's. Although we did do some female musicians, but it was interesting. I don't know, at that time, I guess, sort of wanted to be able to just do what any old cover band would do. And I enjoyed learning some of the songs at the time, but I love songs from the 60s. I was like a really big Joni Mitchell lover, Van Morrison, Neil Young. Like, a lot of those musicians had a profound impact on me. And then moving into the 70s, like Joan Armatrading. And but when I was a kid, I listened lots of musicals. I grew up on musicals. I literally had an uncle who was like the treasurer of the box office at one of the Broadway houses. And like, so I would go and see shows when I was a kid.
Wow.
And just sort of like random shows and more well-known ones, but I just loved, Julie Andrews was my idol. And,
love her.
You know, so there have been a lot of other people in between. David Byrne was really huge, but those are some of the important ones.
And do you have, I mean, this is a hard question, but do you have a favorite Broadway show of all time?
It's sort of hard to ask that once Hamilton came out. Right?
I know. We're all thinking it.
I mean, I have the most, I feel like I had the most kind of respect and awe and like intense feeling seeing that show, you know, as an adult, of an older adult, you know, than I did for almost any other show I've ever seen. But I also, the first show I ever saw was Godspell. Okay. And we had actually lived on the West Coast until I was 7. And when we moved to New Jersey, I started going to shows. That was the first one that my uncle got me tickets to. And so I was sitting maybe like 8 or 10 rows from the front and on the aisle. And not only did I love all the songs and the music itself and just the experience, but at the end, when they're all singing and dancing at the end, the guy who played Jesus came running up the aisle and pretended to look for where a seat was, like with his ticket, and then sat on my lap. And I remember thinking, like, I want to do that someday. And I just like, this is where I want to be. I want to be in a place like this, like all the time.
Yeah. Okay. So what's your dream Broadway role?
Well, I actually have fantasized about playing Donna in Mamma Mia.
Oh my gosh, I want to be Sophie so bad.
So I'm too old to be Sophie, but I figured I could be Donna, and that it would be a really fun part anyway, because she's so badass, and also that I get to like sing all those fun songs. So
Oh my gosh, Laurie, can we manifest this? I mean, I'm 31, so I'm probably too old to be Sophie, but I will do everything I can
pull it off. I see you. You can pull it off.
Oh my gosh. No, that's so funny you said that, because mine is either to be Sophie or the narrator in Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, because I first saw that in Chicago when I was 3. That was my very first show. Why my parents are bringing a 3-year-old to like a Broadway show, I don't know. But that was my very first show I saw, and I listened to that soundtrack every day after I saw it. What about you, Jen?
I have no singing talent whatsoever, but because I am a New Yorker and grew up going to shows, I wish I did and could be on there. But I mean, I don't know if I can really figure out like an all-time even favorite show. It's so hard. But I love A Chorus Line. And I mean, I probably loved the movie first, but I saw it on Broadway and I was like, oh my God, this makes me so happy. I just love that show. But I don't know. I want to
jump. You're making me want to jump in because, of course, I did say before that Julie Andrews was my idol. So playing either Maria in The Sound of Music or Eliza, because she did in My Fair Lady.
Yes.
Because she actually did play that role as well. And I think somewhere in my childhood, I heard her doing it. And both of those, those are the ones that I know every word to.
You know, Laurie, I don't want to make you feel bad, but I played Maria in 8th grade in the
So lucky.
I was a Catholic school theater play. No, did you read her? Well, there's 2 books, but did you read her autobiography of Julie Andrews? Yeah.
No, I don't think. No.
I read the first one, and I think it goes up to maybe like Cinderella, and then I haven't read the second one because it took like probably 10 years to come out, but I think it just came out like in the last year or 2.
Oh, great! I have some more reading to do.
It's really, it's pretty. I think she wrote it too because she like is an author like you, and she
and children's
and children's with her daughter. Yeah, I am big Julie Andrews. Oh my gosh, I have seen The Sound of Music way too many times. But gosh, we're bonding. This is very exciting. Okay. So you have really been a pioneer for the children's musical entertainment. One of the things that you did is you were the first recording artist to ever perform in music videos on Nick Jr.
Is that true? Yeah.
What was it like navigating that new territory? Like you are part of like the future. Well, I guess back then. You were like new.
Let me tell you how clueless I was.
Well, you didn't know you were the first. Like
I had no idea. I mean, the thing was I know they were doing, I guess, some Moose and Z videos at that point as interstitials is what they call that kind of like commercial length little videos, snippets that they would put in between shows because it was a non-commercial channel. Because originally Nick Jr. was Noggin, and that's when I first started with them, and they were seen as an educational preschool channel.
Oh, right.
I didn't have a kid either yet at that point, so I didn't know what Noggin was.
Right.
And so I just remember, like, it was kind of through somebody that I knew named Amy Friedman, who helped develop the channel. So she had like reached out to me some years earlier because her nieces were fans, and she like found an 800 number that I had on the back of my cassette tape, and then couldn't reach me, but then like looked up my name and found my mother because she was out in California. Like it's just sort of a funny random
She worked
story.
hard to find you.
Yeah.
She worked hard, and she did. And she ended up inviting me to come and make these videos, mostly because I had already been on the Today Show at that point, which was another random, like I had done a birthday party for someone who was a line producer who had my CD and said, we should have this woman on the show, and like talked the producer into asking me to come on. And I had also done some celebrity birthday parties, Madonna's daughter and Sting's son, because he was at Madonna's daughter's party. And like, it's just like all these things sort of all came after each other.
Like word of mouth.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Very word of mouth. Yeah. And so when Amy heard that I had been on the Today Show, and there had been a very big response to that, like it just was, it was funny because at the time, so Amazon was like kind of new at the time. And there wasn't so much of there's sort of kids presence, but like the whole thing is everybody bought things on the internet through Amazon because they're really like, it was just sort of the whole internet thing was kind of new. And even having a website was like, ooh, cool. I remember being on the Today Show that first time somewhere in the early 2000s, and all my albums were in like the top 5 best-selling albums of Amazon, not like, it was like me
not like
and
just children's. It was
and it was, I can't remember who else, but it was like, I think actually Van Morrison was up there at the time too, where I was like, oh my God.
Does he know who I am now?
Right. So, and it was for like maybe 12 hours or 20, I can't remember. It wasn't for super long, but because there was like no other way to get my music, because I wasn't really, I mean, I was selling in some store, like kids stores, but I didn't have a distributor or anything. It was just this sort of weird thing where suddenly people were like, Barnes and Noble's distributor was calling me at home being like, is this Two Tomatoes Records? Like me in my 1-bedroom apartment on the Upper West Side, like in my bathrobe. Yeah. What do you want to talk to?
You're like, let me get my publicist.
Hello. So that was sort of craziness. And when I described that to Amy, she was trying to develop these new shows, one of which became Jack's Big Music Show, which is what we were on. She was like, I kind of want to have you in the pilot because we need a couple of music videos. So I did it, and they had one from Dan Zanes as well. She was like, but maybe from what you're saying, we should actually make a few extra videos while we're doing this, and we'll run them as interstitials and just see how they do. And it'll be sort of like a lead up to Jack's Big Music Show. So we made 5 videos. And it was like my whole life turned upside down within a week of those videos starting to air, because I didn't understand that 42 million viewers on Noggin, because there were only 2 or 3 kids cable channels. I didn't even know what a kids cable channel was. Yeah. What does that mean? It's only kids shows all day long. Like none of that made any sense to me because I was used to network television. Like, I mean, it was an interesting time. So we made those first ones, and I was pregnant and like vomiting in between takes.
Oh my goodness.
And like all these things happened. And then and suddenly my shows started selling out all over the country. And like, I was playing, summer stage in Central Park and in Seattle, like everywhere. And Avery Fisher, that was later, but like crazy, there were these crazy shows happening. And then I had a baby and I was like, I can't perform. I got to be home with my baby, so that all happened within like less than a year of time. It was really kind of nutty.
How did you handle that? Because someone like me, well, I guess Jen doesn't like change either. All of that change in less than a year, my anxiety would be way up here. So are you someone that kind of goes with the flow, or did you kind of have to do some reflection, or like, how did you handle not getting overwhelmed with all the new changes and everything that was going on?
Oh, I'm sure I was overwhelmed.
How could you not be?
It was very, literally like the summer before I was broke, like completely broke. And the funny thing, people say like overnight sensation. I'd been working for years and years to get to the place I was, but things did change very quickly, mostly because of this television presence. Right.
Yeah,
so,
right.
I loved, there were so many aspects of it I felt so ready for. I think that was the thing, is like, I wasn't ready to have a baby. I was scared about that. But I became ready while being pregnant for 9 months. I didn't think that things were going to ever kind of reach the level that they did at that point in terms of my career. Having people recognize me on the street and stuff, that was all happening around that time. It still happens, but first of all, I'm not in that world. Like, I was in the world of all the people who were watching my videos because I was having I had a child right at that time. So like, I was starting to like think about going to the playground at the end of my street, walking around with a stroller. Like all the things I was doing were all in the same world of all these moms, mostly moms, but moms and dads who were also going through it. And what?
Who were watching you with
who
their
were
kids.
watching me. Right. And so I found myself like literally running into people who would be gasping when they met me, which, you know, never happened before. But I also, like, I'm a performer. I enjoyed it. Sometimes I felt like I can't stand this. Like I can't even go out with my own baby, like especially the first year that I had her.
Right. Yeah.
And then Jack's Big Music Show didn't even start until she was a year old. There was sort of that, like, it all started while I was pregnant, then it continued and then all of those things. I guess I did a lot of therapy, honestly, which was really, really, really life-saving for me. So I got a lot of help from like the groups that I was in. We moved out of our tiny 1-bedroom apartment, which helped too, just like having a little more space in Manhattan, which, you know, was that like made a big difference just to be able to breathe. And I think I spend a lot of time trying to still be a mom first, even though all these other things were happening. Now that backfired on me in some ways. Like I ended up dropping out of some other TV opportunities that I never got again because I was worried about spending too much time working and not enough time with Lucy, or that being this personality on TV was actually negative for her. Like she'd be like, you know, wanted to watch my DVDs more than hang out with me sometimes. And that like freaked me out.
Yeah. You're like, I'm right here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, that does bring me to a really important question that I've always wondered about people that influence me, you being one of them. And it's, how do you prioritize being a parent with following your dreams? Because, you know, when it comes to dreams that I have, whether it's, you know, creative, professional, or both, you know, I always have the kids in my mind and whether the decision that I make will affect them. So how do you prioritize, you know, your children or child with following your dreams?
I mean, I'm not sure. I think you and I and everybody will make mistakes doing it, you know, but prioritizing is just about awareness, right? It's like noticing and then making a choice to respond to what you notice by doing things in a certain way or putting your energy in a certain direction. And I think there are so many things that we have to make choices about. And sometimes the things that were better for my career that I didn't really think ultimately were going to be harmful to Lucy, I chose my career. And when it was, you know, the opposite, I chose being a mom or, you know, and wife. And actually that was a big thing, that my husband used to be a part of the band. And so like we had to kind of navigate how I would run a business with or without him, what he would do with his life, how we both could parent and have our careers. So yeah, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I feel like, you know, it like life in general, it's just sort of an ongoing process. And I think it's about having a consciousness of like, okay, if what I want to do is prioritize being a mom, then in my choices, that has to be part of my choice. And and allowing that. Like, I think part of what's hard about it is sometimes the assumption, or what I had in my head, was that other people would assume that I either that I should, because they would think of me one way, or that I shouldn't, because that was someone else who thought of me in another way. And so it really came back to like, what did I really think was important, and trying not to be so influenced by what I thought other people were imagining about me.
Yeah, I think that's probably the hardest part is so many people have so many opinions, and you just imagine like, well, what's this one going to say about it? Or what's this one? And it's true. You have to kind of push all of that out and go, what do I want and what's best for me and my family right now? Not what might they say about me because of it.
Yeah. And no matter how much you think that it's like that, you know, no matter how much I know that, doing it is very different.
Yeah.
It's hard to block out the noise.
Yeah. I would say one other thing, which is that, I mean, I have thought about some things that I gave up in my career, but I've never regretted them. Whereas I think that if I lost time with Lucy, I would regret it.
Yeah.
So that's another, like, sometimes remembering what in the long run is actually the thing that is most precious, and maybe less. I think the career things, there's a very giving part to my career, and I think to most people's, but there's also a big ego part to my career. So that was something I had to kind of keep in check as well. It's like, oh, I want to do this because it like makes me feel like I'm important, you know?
Oh yeah.
But being aware of that's why I'm making that choice.
Oh,
and
yeah,
if
absolutely.
is that the choice I want to make compared to what I would be giving up with my family, then I think it's the same kind of thing. It's like, just be conscious of what it is that you're choosing. No judgment about whether or not that is good or bad.
Yeah.
No, I completely understand. And I think that self-awareness is really important. And I think that not everyone has that. So the fact that you do probably led you to make better decisions in the end, just being aware. And I did want to thank you for being so open about the fact that you did go to therapy, because on our channel or our show, we're very open about mental health. Like, I talk about how, I'm on medication for anxiety. And I just mentioned that I started therapy a couple weeks ago. So just thank you for being open about that.
Oh, sure. Well, I got like 20 years on you with the therapy. just to add that to the mix. And I'm very proud of it.
I'm sure we could do a whole episode about it.
We'll have you back on for that therapy talk with Laurie.
Oh, yeah. I got lots to talk about with that.
I think what's great, at least recently, and this is kind of part of my question as well, that your daughter has been working with you a lot, helping you with Facebook Lives. Was she helping you before that, or getting involved with any of your shows or doing anything prior to the pandemic?
Well, so I've been doing this long enough that, as I think I mentioned, I was already doing a lot of shows and things before I had her. So then once I had her, she came to everything as a baby, traveled with us. And again, that was that weird time where things were exploding and I was like nursing in between shows and stuff.
Oh my gosh.
And then she got to a point where I realized I couldn't really bring her because it was so hard for her to not be able to be with me, but see me up on the stage. So there were a few years of that where I definitely had to not bring her. And then she got a little bit older and started to be able to come and like start helping like at the merch table and, or backstage, coming on stage with me. There was a short period of time where she did that a little. She often would record. She would be part of my recordings. So she's on a lot of my recordings. Cause I would need kids and I'd be like, do you and your friends want to come over and sing background vocals? Or do you want to do a duet with me? So we did some of that and videos, same thing. I would like when I needed a ringer for a video, I'd be like, would you come down and we just film you? Just have to do a couple hand things. Or she definitely would jump in and be like, you're working on a song, Mom? I could help you with that, So lots of different ways.
Yeah,
it's
that's
nice
awesome.
to have a willing subject, isn't it?
So willing only up until a certain age, somewhere around between like in the tween years, that really waned. Although she could still do the merch selling, and that was fun. She would like ask a friend if they wanted to come, especially a friend who might have grown up on my music. That was like a little nostalgic, fun thing for them to do, and work the merch table. And she sold a lot because they'd be like, "Are you Laurie's daughter?" Like, yeah, let me tell you what you should do this and this. And
Nice.
Are you sure she doesn't want to go into sales?
Yeah.
She's actually doing technical theater.
That's awesome.
So interesting, which she said is my fault. She's like, I grew up in all these theaters with you, Mom, backstage, and that's just where I feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Gosh, well, she'd be
That's
perfect
great.
for that. Is she going to do like stage management or?
Not so much. No, it's more like, I think she's discovering what she wants to do. And it's really hard. They can't do very much.
Oh, yeah.
She started school, and halfway through her freshman year, the pandemic hit. So, so I don't know exactly, but stage management is not actually what she's interested in because of the details. I think she prefers like building and rigging and like doing, like actually making the sets.
That's awesome.
So she's probably learning a lot from your
Jeremiah. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we don't build that much, but he did actually paint. He's going to paint so we have these live streams, which we sort of touched on. One of the things I'm doing during the pandemic after I was doing those Facebook lives was that we finally started to get it together to do ticketed events that were live. And so every 6 weeks I've been doing a themed, just super full length graphics looking like a full stage, I hope, like turning my living room into that performance. And we in the first couple, we just used the actual backdrops that we would use during my live shows, in-person shows. But then to mix it up and to follow the themes, we started changing them. And for the holiday show, we actually had Jeremiah paint the backdrop and to look like my Christmas album. So now he's doing one that we can use for some other things, but we're using for the Valentine's Day show.
Which is on Valentine's Day, but you actually have 2 shows for it?
Yep.
Can you talk more about your upcoming virtual concerts?
Yeah, so the next one is February 14th. And there's one at 12 Eastern and one at 5 Eastern. And feedback from anyone who's listening, if there's some other suggestion of how to do 2 shows in a day and actually get them at times when at least one where your kid isn't napping, falling asleep, eating, going to school, having a religious thing happen. Like it's just like, I can't, some people want them on Saturdays, some want them on Sundays. Some people are in the UK and some people are in California and just the time zones. And so, and doing more than 2 in a day would be hard. But anyway, that's what we're trying to do is we realized that when I was only doing 1, that we were missing a lot of people just because of the time of it. So it's a 12 and 5. We have other ones scheduled for March and May and end of June, I think. So they'll all be coming up like a spring holiday show, a Mother's Day and a Father's Day show. And then we'll see where we are with live streams. But they're really fun because there's a lot of interactivity, not just with what you pointed out before about my songs, which is very conscious, by the way, that like I try to write songs that allow kids to encourage them, that give them like sort of internal directions to want to move their bodies either from the music or the lyrics, because that's, to me, that's the language, that's the language they've been speaking longer sometimes even than talking at the age that they're listening to my music.
Oh, for sure.
So there's interactivity with the music itself, but also Katie builds these like graphics that are like moving and happening live during the show that she's putting up. And then the platform we use also allows us to ask like little polls or questions and that you can click and respond to. So if you have a kid who needs to move, there's that part is there. But if you also have a kid that wants to interact more with the screen or that you want to talk to about things as a parent, it's kind of all wrapped up in it. And before the show even starts, we have like an hour-long pre-show where you can set up your screen at home to make sure that it's streaming right. But we're playing videos and we do a game that's also interactive that's related to the theme of the show. So it's
that's so cool.
It's a long, fun day if you want it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the interactivity is great. That's such a great idea too, to make it a little something extra. And you have just a couple 13 best-selling award-winning albums and you have a new one coming out. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So the new one's called Let's Go. I've put out a bunch of singles already that are part of the album. It was definitely, luckily I had started it before the pandemic hit, but then I had to finish it during the pandemic. And so we did a lot of trying to figure out how to do that remotely, to work with the engineer I was working with, to get the musicians from my band being able to record themselves, and that was a little bit crazy, but it got finished. And I'm excited about it. I feel like some of the songs are very much because of the pandemic, like Superhero Mask. But some of them also, like I wrote a song called Beautiful Light before the pandemic hit. And as it happened, I realized, and it's really just about like noticing ourselves and realizing how much we have inside of ourselves, and thinking about that as hopefully having kids being able to sing that and think about that about themselves and love themselves. Like there's been so much turmoil between, all the things going on in this country in the last year. It really felt like the right song for this time as well. And there are a lot of songs like that on there. So I'm excited for them to come out. And then I have some that people haven't heard yet that I think they'll have fun with.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I love that you're having those kind of songs on the album. I just, from personal experience, my son, he's like the sweetest thing ever, but he's kind of like a perfectionist. And when he doesn't do something right in his mind, like stack the right block or whatever, he gets really hard on himself. So it'd be nice to have a song like that has kind of those positive affirmations in it. Because sometimes, he'll be like, I didn't do it good. I didn't do well. And to have a song that kind of preaches the opposite, it's so good for kids to speak highly of themselves. So I really love that.
I hope that you have played I'm Not Perfect for your son. Do you know that song of mine?
I have not yet.
Well, now you have another song to play for him.
We talked about you being an author earlier. I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. It's interesting because I don't think of myself so much as an author, because the books themselves, the lyrics are the book. And then I've worked with 2 different publishing companies, and they find different illustrators. Then I'm part of that process. But it is wonderful to see the songs turn into these visual representations, and see the words on a page, and also see like the possibilities for stories that could be behind the words that aren't necessarily said in the lyrics. And so that's been really fun. And it's different than making a video, at least the way that I make videos, because a lot of times I make them so that kids can see me playing an instrument and like thinking about the music part of it, and encouraging the movement, right? But in a book, it's like there are just different things to highlight. So that has been really fun. We turned the last 3 that I did with Simon & Schuster were We Are the Dinosaurs, Monster Boogie, and Pillowland. And Monster Boogie and We Are the Dinosaurs were both illustrated by Ben Clanton. It's like a super fun, whimsical, like more of a drawing cartoon style than Camille Garoche, who did Pillowland. And she actually like built those scenes almost like dioramas using fabric and feathers and cutouts and drawings, and then took pictures and photoshopped them to bring in light. And so just 2 super different styles, but I love them both. And I feel really lucky to have been able to work with them. Just the editors that I work with as well were really special people. So it's fun to be able to collaborate like that.
Do you think you'll turn any of your new songs into books?
I would love to. I don't know. I mean, I feel like people really loved the books, and they sold fine, but they were not like flying off the shelves, which means that it's harder to get somebody to come back and say, hey, let's do it again. So unless I'm doing it myself, I don't know that it will happen anytime soon, which is a bummer, because I feel like Moon, The Goldfish, like that, like they both make great books. And I have a newer song called Waiting for the Elevator that was the title track of my last album. It has also become like, I mean, I get requests for that almost as much as like We Are the Dinosaurs now. And it's like perfect for a book, so I hope so, we'll see.
But that's when you see that like the fine line between lyrics and poetry, especially with your songs, when you could so easily turn your songs into books.
Yeah. It's really fun to be able to see them that way.
Well, thank you so much for being on our show, Laurie. It was great talking to you. Thank you for letting us fangirl and really get inside your creative brain. It was so fun.
I totally had a great time too. So thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Magical Mommy Monday podcast. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Magical Mommy Monday, on Twitter at Magic Mom Monday, or you can email us at magicalmommymondays@gmail.com. The music you heard on this episode was produced by Matt Harvey. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.